Aloha and welcome to the Two-Wheel Revolution here on ThinkTechHawaii.com. I'm your host, Peter Rosegg. We have a great show for you today. I hope you'll stay around for it. And because at the end, in addition to a great show, we're going to have another micro-mobility moment. Aloha again. I'm Peter Rosegg, the host of the Two-Wheel Revolution, and my guest today is Anthony Chang, who is an advocate for bicycle safety, for traffic safety, I think, in general. He's been very active. If you want to read more of things he's written, go search Star Advertiser or civilbeat.com, and you'll come up with some of the pieces that he has written. Before I get into a discussion with Anthony, I want to make a couple of announcements. One is that the bike rebate, the State Department of Transportation opened the bike rebate program a few days ago as we record this. If you bought an electric bike or electric moped and you qualify, since July 2020, you could get $500. And you should go to the DOT website, or your bike store will be able to help you collect that money. And we want to have a great turnout, because the more people who get it, the more likely they are to extend it and increase the amount of money. One of the things that came out in the paper recently was that on Oahu, in the fiscal year 2021, there were about 1,400 electric bike registrations. And that tripled almost in 2022, last year, to 49, actually more than tripled to 4,900. And so far this year, 2 months into this year, 5,300 electric bikes have been registered with the city. So it's pretty clear that e-bikes are here. They're coming more and more all the time. So Anthony B. Chang, he's an award-winning safe streets advocate, master urban and regional planning, focusing on transportation, and advocate of the year from the Hawaii Bicycling League recently, and the owner of, I believe, 2 electric bikes. Welcome, Anthony. Aloha.
Mahalo, Peter, and thank you everyone who is watching and tuning in. Thank you for your time. Happy to be here.
Great. I have at least 3 dedicated viewers, so we're in a small but dedicated group here. Anthony, just to start out, I know you got into the traffic safety issue in a very tragic, unfortunate way. Your sister was killed 10 years ago this month in a traffic accident, 24 years old, I think. Is it correct to say that this is really sort of set your life on this path?
Yes, I would say it did, but it wasn't immediately. My sister passed away in 2013. I got involved with Safe Streets activism probably about late 2016. So just want to mention that it's not like she passed away and all of a sudden I came here. But a couple years later, as I'm trying to figure out, my next path in life, I thought, well, I'd like to keep my sister's memory alive and make sure that her life and death was not in vain. So that's it. And it's just continued. So it's how I got my master's and eventually started doing Safe Streets advocacy.
What's your day job?
I am a building plans examiner at the city and county of Honolulu.
Right. Terrific. So when my permit is delayed, I should call you. No.
You should contact the city at any rate.
Okay. All right. Don't call Anthony if your permit is delayed. It's not his fault. So for the record, you have how many electric bikes?
I have 2. I have one I bought almost 2 years ago. You can actually almost see it in my background. You kind of see the the head of it anyway. And it started out at 20 miles per hour. I recently legally modified it so that I can go to have the top speed of 28 miles per hour. It's a relatively big bike because I'm still a relatively tall person, but but this bike is meant to be kind of my commuter bike or my long distance travel bike, but I don't have to set it up. My other electric bike I bought almost about a year ago, it's a cargo bike. but it can fit, in addition, besides me, it can fit like one additional person. So sometimes I'll put my mom or a friend on it, and it's also great for groceries. But it does have a top speed of 20 miles per hour. But that's also figuratively my workhorse. Oh, I should mention I also have like a second job doing. I occasionally do deliveries for Grubhub on occasion. It's a great job because I get to do exercise with it, and the electric assist actually helps with it quite a bit because I would say I'm in relatively okay shape, but I probably wouldn't make it more than like 20 miles per bicycling 20 miles per day. But with the electric assist, I'm able to do like 50. So yeah, I mean, that's the reason why there's a rationale why I have two electric bikes. One for my just day-to-day commutes and maybe some long distance trekking. And the other one is like literally to help me run errands, but also for my other job.
I imagine your mother is probably happy that it can't go more than 20 miles per hour. Just guessing that she's probably on the back of that bike, probably just as happy not to go too fast.
Go
ahead.
She's fine.
All right, just kidding. So you do deliveries for Pub Grub, I thought Uber Eats occasionally.
Yeah, Grubhub, Uber Eats. Been doing that for about a little over a year now. I think since October of last year. It's been a fun adventure. I get to visit random restaurants, random homes, make quite a bit of money. Instead of like pumping money into a gym, it's the other way around. Like money gets pumped into me, and I'm still like bicycling like 50 miles per day. So it's been great.
So you raised a good point. I think a lot of people think, oh, electric bikes, no exercise. Why should I bother? But you're sort of saying you do get exercise.
Yeah, I studied about that actually. So about a year ago, actually, I published an op-ed called "Why an Electric Bike Would Be a Good Fit for Oahu," and I do mention a study that is done. Actually, it's been done by like various places, but there is this argument that electric bikes is quote unquote cheating. And which means, people who get electric bikes, it implies that people who do electric bikes don't exercise, which is not actually true. The study actually shows that actually electric cyclists actually on average get more exercise than than normal cyclists, because they're just far more likely to use their electric bikes. They can go longer distances, they're going to bike more. And yeah, that's been the case for me. I go up hills now. I still got to huff and puff to get to the hills. It makes it easier, but it doesn't make it easy. But the point is, I can make more money and do more things for longer periods of time than would normally. I used to catch the bus actually to help out a friend in politics out in Aiea. And now I just ditch the bus and actually use my electric bike. And I live in Chinatown presently, right? For those wondering like how far Aiea is, but that's a good 10 miles each way. Yeah, that's before I start walking door to door for my friend for about an hour or two. And the electric assist, people like think, when I tell people about that trek, it sounds insane, but when you do factor in the electric assist, whether it's 3.5 or four times as much, it's really only like a 2.5, 3 mile commute. That's what it only feels like. And that's each way. And it's a nice bike ride, but it's not like the super strenuous one. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, you can have the fanciest non-electric bike in the world, but if it's sitting in the rack and you're not using it because, I don't feel like it today, you're not getting any exercise. So the fact that you get out more often on your electric bike right there gives you somewhat of a leg up from the casual. I'm sure there are a lot of people with a rowing machine in the living room and a treadmill in the bedroom and a bike in the garage, and none of them ever get used. But you got to do it if you're going to get that kind of exercise. So that's great.
No, and they're just a lot of fun. I also mentioned that in my op-ed too. So like it allows me to feel like feel like I'm in Tour de France shape without getting into Tour de France shape. I get like 4 times the assist. I feel like literally like the assist is like 3.5, 4 times as much. So I feel 3.5, 4 times. You simply feel stronger with the electric current, like, boosting your legs, but you still have to pedal. So it actually it's a lot of fun. It's why people use it more.
And, my experience is that on the return trip, when you're tired and you're thinking, gee, am I going to make it? This is really this return part, going out was easy, coming back, not so much. But when you've got that electric assist, you're going to make it. You're going to, even if there's a hill up to your house at the very end, that you can do that. So that to me has always been a great benefit of the electric bike. Okay, so you've got two of them, and you do one for kind of work stuff and errands, and one for going back and forth to work or wherever you're going. So tell me about the experience of bicycling in Honolulu. I think, whether you agree with it or not, there's a sort of a rap about it not being safe enough, and you're a safety advocate. When you're on your bike, do you feel safe?
Yes. I would like to mention, it's a longer story about this, right? So there's
Go ahead. We got time.
So, how I got into bicycling is when I first started doing safe streets advocacy, I couldn't find very many groups that actually focus on the specifics of street safety. With the exception of Hawaii Bicycling League. I had a friend who introduced me to Daniel Alexander, who was then the advocacy director of Hawaii Bicycling League. He now works for the city as Vision Zero coordinator. For those not who are familiar with concept of Vision Zero, it's the idea that you can have zero traffic deaths, which some cities have come very close to. But I would also argue we've had it for most of history. This is before the mass production of the automobile, where traffic safe fatalities. But anyway, going with Hawaii Bicycling League, I just kind of joined up. Actually, I joined up as a member of Hawaii Bicycling League before I even became a cyclist. I was kind of focusing on pedestrian safety, but I met up with Daniel Alexander. We got along well on Hawaii Bicycling League as this group of very enthusiastic people who were very enthusiastic about safety. And after hanging out with them for about a year and a half, you become interested in bicycling. So that was about it. When I first got into it, I have never even owned a bicycle actually at that point. The last time I had bicycled had been it was about a 14-year gap. I was maybe in college. And even then, I only borrowed my friend's bicycle to just bike around parks. And so it was incredibly very basic. When I got into Biki, first I had to relearn how to ride. It took me about an hour, actually, 45 minutes to balance again, 15 minutes to turn. This is after a 14-year absence, mind you. And even then, I'm just like, I'm worried. I wore reflector. I had a picture of it. I wore reflector gear head to toe. White bicycle helmet. And I thought, I'm just going to try this for a few months, 3 months. As soon as I get hit by a car or have some major spill, I'm done. That's it. And 4 years and 14,000 miles later, I've actually loved it quite a bit. It has increased my family. We grew up poor, so we never owned a car. So we either walked everywhere or caught the bus. And with the electric bike has just completely replaced the bus. I still walk sometimes for shorter distances because it's just good to walk. But now, I bike to IA and back, going back to what I earlier said. And now I don't know how I would do deliveries without my electric bike. So
yeah, for sure.
It's just been fun. What it was turned into just a curiosity. I'm just hanging around these bicycling folks. I want to see what's up. And I'm actually turning into a major fashion. You can even see it. I'm literally wearing my passion on me. So
yeah, on your everyday life. That's terrific. So you do feel safe, but you are. What would you say we need to do to make Honolulu a safer place for bicycling?
Definitely more protected bike lanes, either with bollards or just outright barriers. A lot of people aren't necessarily going to feel safe or comfortable in a bike lane that is just simply a stripe, right? And that's about it. You want to get people to do it. They just need to feel safe, but also comfort. And besides these, in addition to safety, the next part would be also just comfort. Maybe adding more trees. Big believer in that because trees provide protection from the sun, the rain. It generally makes it comfortable, and it generally just makes cities just nicer to look at in general too. But I have a master's in urban planning, and they talk about this heat island effect, right? That's what happens when you have so much concrete that it traps around the cityscape, and you just feel hotter inside the city. Trees would also make that more comfortable too. So between that, but safety, and after that, probably just comfort. We have a lot from an urban planner's perspective. We do actually, at least within the core city, we do have at least from where I deliver is from Kalihi to probably like Kaimuki Kahala, we actually have a lot of the mixed use stuff. You know, some people argue we maybe need a little bit more density, but I generally feel that mixed use makes bicycling a little bit more efficient. And we definitely have that in the town. It definitely lose more of that when you get more outside of the town. Like when I go into Aiea, yeah, it would be really difficult to e-bike it around. I did it, but you know, it's kind of different to just visit my friend on weekends than, you know, do day-to-day errands with it. So
Yeah.
safety, comfort, and if you want to make this work for other parts of the city, we may have to change zoning laws to allow density and mixed use a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. Land use is kind of the big elephant in the room that's kind of beyond some of, you know, we concentrate on bike lanes and bollards and all that sort of thing, but the big elephant really is is land use and how we design our cities and how we make them more livable. I'm sure you've heard this complaint. I hear it all the time from people. Oh, you know, King Street, they put in that bike lane. I can't, I'm scared to make a left turn. You know, it's slowing me down. You know, what would you say to people who have that kind of complaint?
So as a transportation planner, I just think about these things, sorry, from like a data perspective.
Okay.
And though I understand it makes people feel unsafe and the nervousness, at least it's making you kind of more cautious, right? Thinking twice and then that sort of thing. But and while I don't have like the data for it, data for most cities have shown, with the exception of possibly New York City, I think it's a bit more common for just about every city. Adding bike lanes typically actually makes roads safer. It reduces traffic fatalities for everyone, whether it's drivers, people who walk, or whether or not people who bike. And I would have to look at the King Street bike lane has been around for about 9 years now, but I would like to see the difference in, you know, collisions for each year just along that strip from where, you know, it runs from Alapai to Eisenberg, that strip. But I would wager the collisions have actually probably gone down like southwards, you know. So it feels unsafe, but feeling versus data are two different things. You know, but left turns are actually like historically actually the most dangerous type of turn you can make, even without like cyclists being present. I think they're like 60% of like collisions or something like that. After that, it's like going straight and turning right, or like, you know what I mean? They take up like less than the majority of it. So
yeah, well, that kind of makes intuitive sense. You know, I always say to people, because I'm not a numbers guy and I'm not that interested in the data. You know, if the worst thing that happens is that you go more slowly, you know, a few miles more slowly, that you take a few more seconds when you're making a turn to make sure there's nobody in the bike lane, you know, that doesn't sound like a great tragedy to me. Obviously, you want to avoid some kind of an accident. And if you're, as you say, if you're being more cautious, you're being more vigilant while you're driving. Most of us are driving in kind of, you know, our unconscious state. I don't know how many times we've, you know, you get in the car, you drive, you haven't had this experience. So let me tell you, I get in the car, I drive someplace, I get there and I look around and say, how did I get here? Because I drove the whole way in kind of unconscious mode. And I think most of us depend on this kind of intuitive skill to drive, but it does make life a little less safe for other people. So, and speaking of fatalities, the fatality we recently had, the one girl killed and another one severely injured. You told me earlier this was very close to where your sister was hit.
Yeah. So, well, unfortunately, I need to. 10 years ago this March, it will be March 20th. It was March 20th. My sister got struck, and 21st, unfortunately, she died. She was pronounced dead in the hospital. Yeah, it was where she got struck and died. Circumstances were a little bit different, though. It was in the evening. And I actually do touch upon that, which is why I mentioned some of the recommendations. I do feel like lighting is an issue on Kapiolani Boulevard. I think the lights maybe aren't bright enough, or the trees just need to not cover up the lights as much. But I had to write the op-ed, or one of my friends suggested I had to write the op-ed because that was where Emilia Hong, my sister, got struck and killed. And if there's a lot of this focus on this guy who had 164 traffic violations, which is of course incredibly terrible. But in my opinion, it was the Kapiolani Boulevard, which is many ways built like a freeway. There's like, multiple lanes of traffic going at 35 miles next an hour, next to what is effectively a high school, as well as just a high pedestrian area. There's like the Blaisdell, south of that is like Kaka'aka, Ala Moana, where it's very mixed use. It's just a bad idea to put what is equivalent of a freeway next to a school. And even now I'm kind of saying, oh, that, I'm reading some of the comments, which it kind of infuriates me, right? People are saying, oh, that kid just like looked both ways. He would have been fine. But that's kind of really not how traffic works. I'm going to tell you that, because sometimes a car will just like turn off an intersection. And if you look both ways, maybe the car wasn't there and it was there later. And then cars travel, of course, moving at 35 miles per hour. A person walks at maybe like 3, that's still about 12 times faster. So the car you could think it's safe, right? The car is like a couple of blocks away, right? And then all of a sudden the car is there. And so even though there is this focus on this gentleman, on the gentleman who had all these with all these.
He's not a gentleman, I don't think. But I got you. Let's get back to bicycling for a minute. What other things? Infrastructure and more bike lanes is probably the most common thing people talk about. I agree with you on the comfort factor. What else? What else do we need to do to encourage more bicycling in Honolulu? Are there other things you would, I'll make you king for a day? What should we do?
Besides, okay, so we're gonna promote like electric bicycling, right? For like just a quick second. I'm gonna talk about electric cycling for just a second. I would love to have like a charging station for my electric bike, because the federal government focuses on like charging stations for cars. There's definitely no charging station anywhere for an electric bike anywhere, no outlet or things like that. And this is despite the fact that, again, there's a study that shows that electric bikes have actually outsold electric cars for several years now, even in the United States. So that was it. And if you made that kind of more easier, I mean, you could argue, well, maybe it's not necessary, the batteries for electric bikes, but it would just be kind of an extra convenience that would get people to do it. And it wouldn't have to be like this huge, everyone has seen the Beaky stations that run off solar power. It could just be like a solar powered station next to like a bike rack and something you could just like kind of plug it in. But so that'd be great. I would like to soar. I mean, like bicycling infrastructure benefits electric bikes overall, but having an outlet at a bike rack would definitely benefit electric two-wheel vehicles specifically.
Okay, and one of the other questions I have, and I ask this to most of my guests, it seems to me, we've got, as we talked about, we've got an increasing number of electric bikes. I think probably an increasing number of regular bikes, especially during the pandemic. We have now electric scooters, kick scooters. We have electric skateboards. We have electric one wheels, uniwheels, all these things, and they're all kind of should be trying to use those bike lanes or be on the right side of a road. Do you see a conflict between, and the other thing is, of course, they all have a different speed capacity. Do you experience, or do you see a conflict coming between these various modes of e-transportation or regular old biking?
No, even though a lot of the bike lanes say bicycles only, but again, as someone who has used a lot of probably all the infrastructure, at least in town, I just don't see a conflict. It's micro-mobility, and in general, it gives, whether you're on an electric scooter or, those like one-wheel things that, that are motorized, people balance on, in general, it's good to give people other choices, alternatives. So I'm not like a bicycle, I'm not a bike lane should be for bicyclists only. I've seen people walk on it, depending, sorry to touch on a different topic, but sometimes the sidewalk is actually congested, sometimes, of course, because of people who are houseless. But I'm okay with this because I see them coming, they're not in the way. It's not like they're taking up the entire space. And it would only become an issue if like somehow we have like, it would be a great problem to have. We have like congestion, right? The closest thing I've ever seen on it maybe like if we like during rush hour, actually PM rush hour, the King Street bike lane going Diamond Head, there is a little bit of congestion, but even though not so much where I'm literally walking at or bicycling, at walking speed. So I'm all for it. I'm all for people using modes that reduce their carbon footprint, that are less likely to collide with other things, other people, and that sort of thing. So,
All right. Well,
more power to you.
I'm glad I think you're a little bit more optimistic than I am, but or maybe a lot more optimistic than I am, but I think we just all have to learn to adapt drivers have to learn to adapt to more personal vehicles in the street, and people on personal vehicles have to adapt to one another. It's just going to take time. I mean, Amsterdam, Copenhagen didn't become bicycling paradises overnight. It took 40 or 50 years and a lot of effort to turn them into the kind of places that they are now, where bicycles have the right of way and have more. There are hundreds more of them, thousands more of them, and everybody kind of defers to them because everybody has ridden a bicycle. Everybody has had their kids or their grandparents or whoever on a bicycle, so they just kind of. I'm sure there are accidents. There are always accidents. So I think we just got to kind of keeping on, and I think this increase will be a good one. So, Anthony, thank you very much. We've got another minute or two. Is there anything else you want to add? Read Anthony's op-ed. It's there in Civil Beat and Star Advertiser. I'm sure you can get his. He sends out notices to get people to testify all the time. I wish I was better at it. Anything else you want to add before we need to go?
If I can make an ask, please support Hawaii Bicycling League. And if you, they've easily become my favorite nonprofit, as I kind of touched upon it at the beginning. Before I became a cyclist, and definitely now as I've become a very enthusiastic cyclist. There's an event, of course, this Saturday. You're probably familiar. It's Zach's Ride for Safety. It's from 9:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. It starts from the Kaka'ako Waterfront Park and ends at the Hawaii State Capitol. Participate in the event, check them out. You're going to see so many cyclists. You're actually probably going to see cycling congestion. It's still a great event.
Right.
If nothing else, make a contribution and get involved. It's a fun group.
Good. HBL.org. Very simple.
HBL.org. Yeah.
All right, Anthony. Thank you very, very much. I invite you to stick around for a minute or two because I always end these shows with what I call the micromobility moment. And here it is up on the screen. And this is a very short one, but it's very pertinent to what we've been talking about. You can see here, if we go to the next slide, this is a visual that was done by I think a Dutch artist, and it kind of shows public space. And we never think about it this way, but if you think about it this way, the space where pedestrians can be are very narrow little strips that either cross the streets or along the edge of the building. And the rest of the infrastructure there, these streets, are kind of a great chasm where bad things happen, where people get run over and so forth. And if you think about public space this way, you think, why? That's kind of the American story, more space for cars than for people. And very, very gradually, we are taking back some of that chasm. We're moving we're putting in bicycle lanes that extend, 6 feet or so beyond the sidewalk, or taking that first lane and allowing mixed use in that lane. But it's a way of looking at the world that's a little different, I think. I want to thank Yana Otsuka, who was one of our previous guests who turned me on to this, and the artist was kind enough to let me use it. But it really kind of reorients, I think, your way of thinking about space and the public space and where we all interact on our streets. And with that, I want to thank Anthony again for being a great guest and for all he is doing for bicycling. I want to thank you all for watching and encourage you to look again in a couple of weeks when we'll have another guest. So with that, I will say aloha to all 3 of my dedicated viewers and everybody else who's going to see this. Aloha and thank you.
Aloha, mahalo for your time.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.